Correction, our worst enemy. All the more reason.
This is an ABC News special report.
And good afternoon. I'm Jon Claiborne from ABC News headquarters in New York. We are interrupting your regular programming because President Obama is about to come to the briefing room, the White House briefing room, to deliver a statement. And he is likely to take questions on the broken ceasefire in the Middle East, a phone call that he had earlier this day with Russian President Vladimir Putin, today's jobs report, and Congress's latest vote on immigration reform. I want to bring in ABC's chief White House correspondent now, Jon Karl. John, a lot going on there, and now Congress getting ready for its recess, a little more than 5 weeks beginning today. John?
That's right, Ron. The president will likely tout the good economic news, more than 200,000 jobs created in July, but also take a swipe at Congress, as you mentioned, going on a 5-week August recess before addressing the issue of the border crisis, all those unaccompanied minors crossing over the border. Neither the House nor the Senate has been able to act, and here's the president.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Friday. I thought I'd take some questions. But first, let me say a few words about the economy. This morning we learned that our economy created over 200,000 new jobs in July. That's on top of about 300,000 new jobs in June. So we are now in a 6-month streak with at least 200,000 new jobs each month. That's the first time that has happened since 1997. Over the past year, we've added more jobs than any year since 2006. And all told, our businesses have created 9.9 million new jobs over the past 53 months. That's the longest streak of private sector job creation in our history. And as we saw on Wednesday, the economy grew at a strong pace in the spring. Companies are investing, consumers are spending, American manufacturing, energy, technology, autos, all are booming. And thanks to the decisions that we've made and the grit and resilience of the American people, we've recovered faster and come farther from the recession than almost any other advanced country on earth. So the good news is the economy clearly is getting stronger. Things are getting better. Our engines are revving a little bit louder. And the decisions that we make right now can sustain and keep that growth and momentum going. Unfortunately, there are a series of steps that we could be taking to maintain momentum and perhaps even accelerate it. There are steps that we could be taking that would result in more job growth, higher wages, higher incomes, more relief for middle-class families. And so far, at least, in Congress, we have not seen them willing or able to take those steps. I've been pushing for common sense ideas like rebuilding our infrastructure in ways that are sustained over many years and support millions of good jobs and help businesses compete. I've been advocating on behalf of raising the minimum wage, making it easier for working folks to pay off their student loans, fair pay, paid leave. All these policies have two things in common. All of them would help working families feel more stable and secure, and all of them so far have been blocked or ignored by Republicans in Congress. That's why my administration keeps taking whatever actions we can take on our own to help working families. Now, it's good that Congress was able to pass legislation to strengthen the VA, and I want to thank the chairman and ranking members who were involved in that. It's good that Congress was able to at least fund transportation projects for a few more months before leaving town, although it falls far short of the kind of infrastructure effort that we need that would actually accelerate the economy. But for the most part, the big ticket items, the things that would really make a difference in the lives of middle-class families, those things just are not getting done. Let's just take a recent example, immigration. We all agree that there's a problem that needs to be solved in a portion of our southern border. And we even agree on most of the solutions. But instead of working together, instead of focusing on the 80% where there is agreement between Democrats and Republicans, between the administration and Congress, House Republicans, as we speak, are trying to pass the most extreme and unworkable versions of a bill that they already know is going nowhere, that can't pass the Senate, and that if it were to pass the Senate, I would veto. They know it. They're not even trying to actually solve the problem. This is a message bill that they couldn't quite pull off yesterday, so they made it a little more extreme, so maybe they can pass it today, just so they can check a box before they're leaving town for a month. And this is on an issue that they all insisted had to be a top priority. Now, our efforts administratively so far have helped to slow the tide of child migrants trying to come to our country. But without additional resources and help from Congress, we're just not going to have the resources we need to fully solve the problem. That means while they're out on vacation, I'm going to have to make some tough choices to meet the challenge, with or without Congress. And yesterday, even though they've been sitting on a bipartisan immigration bill for over a year, House Republicans suggested that since they don't expect to actually pass a bill that I can sign, that I actually should go ahead and act on my own to solve the problem. Keep in mind that just a few days earlier, they voted to sue me for acting on my own. And then when they couldn't pass a bill yesterday, they put out a statement suggesting I should act on my own because they couldn't pass a bill. So immigration has not gotten done. A student loan bill that would help folks who have student loan debt consolidate and refinance at lower rates, that didn't pass. The transportation bill that they did pass just gets us through the spring when we should actually be planning years in advance. States and businesses are raising the minimum wage for their workers because this Congress is failing to do so. Even basic things like approving career diplomats for critical ambassadorial posts aren't getting done. Last night, for purely political reasons, Senate Republicans, for a certain period of time, blocked our new ambassador to Russia. It raised such an uproar that finally they went ahead and let our Russian ambassador pass at a time when we are dealing every day with the crisis in Ukraine. They're still blocking our ambassador to Sierra Leone, where there's currently an Ebola outbreak. They're blocking our ambassador to Guatemala, even as they demand that we do more to stop the flow of unaccompanied children from Guatemala. Now, there are a lot of things that we could be arguing about on policy. That's what we should be doing as a democracy, but we shouldn't be having an argument about placing career diplomats with bipartisan support in countries around the world where we have to have a presence. The bottom line is this: we have come a long way over the last 5.5 years. Our challenges are nowhere near as daunting as they were when I first came into office. But the American people demand and deserve a strong and focused effort on the part of all of us to keep moving the country forward and to focus on their concerns. And the fact is, we could be much further along, and we could be doing even better, and the economy could be even stronger, and more jobs could be created if Congress would do the job that the people sent them here to do. And I will not stop trying to work with both parties to get things moving faster for middle-class families and those trying to get into the middle class. When Congress returns next month, my hope is that instead of simply trying to pass partisan message bills on party lines that don't actually solve problems, they're going to be willing to come together to at least focus on some key areas where there's broad agreement. After all that we've had to overcome, our Congress should stop standing in the way of our country's success. So with that, let me take a couple of questions, and I will start with Roberta Rampton of Reuters.
Thanks. I want to ask about the situation in the Middle East. And why do you think Israel should embrace a ceasefire in Gaza when one of its soldiers appears to have been abducted and when Hamas continues to use its network of tunnels to launch attacks? And also, have you seen Israel act at all on your call to do more to protect civilians?
Well, First of all, I think it's important to note that we have, and I have, unequivocally condemned Hamas and the Palestinian factions that were responsible for killing 2 Israeli soldiers and abducting a third almost minutes after a ceasefire had been announced. And the UN has condemned them as well. And I want to make sure that they are listening. If they are serious about trying to resolve this situation, that soldier needs to be unconditionally released as soon as possible. I have been very clear throughout this crisis that Israel has a right to defend itself. No country can tolerate missiles raining down on its cities and people having to rush to bomb shelters every 20 minutes or half hour. No country can or would tolerate tunnels being dug under their land that can be used to launch terrorist attacks. And so, not only have we been supportive of Israel in its right to defend itself, but in very concrete terms, for example, in support for the Iron Dome program that has intercepted rockets that are firing down on Israeli cities. We've been, trying to cooperate as much as we can to make sure that Israel is able to protect its citizens. Now, at the same time, we've also been clear that innocent civilians in Gaza caught in the crossfire have to weigh on our conscience, and we have to do more to protect them. A ceasefire was one way in which we could stop the killing, to step back and to try to resolve some of the underlying issues that have been building up over quite some time. Israel committed to that 72-hour ceasefire, and it was violated. And trying to put that back together is going to be challenging, but we will continue to make those efforts. And let me take this opportunity, by the way, to give Secretary Jon Karl credit. He has been persistent. He has worked very hard. He has endured, on many occasions, really unfair criticism, simply to try to get to the point where the killing stops and the underlying issues about Israel's security, but also the concerns of Palestinians in Gaza can be addressed. We're going to keep working towards that. It's going to take some time. I think it's going to be very hard to put a ceasefire back together again if Israelis and the international community can't feel confident that Hamas can follow through on a ceasefire commitment. And it's not particularly relevant whether a particular leader in Hamas ordered this abduction. The point is that when they sign on to a ceasefire, they're claiming to speak for all the Palestinian factions. And if they don't have control of them, and just moments after a ceasefire is signed, you have Israeli soldiers being killed and captured, then it's hard for the Israelis to feel confident that a ceasefire can actually be honored. I'm in constant consultation with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Our national security team is in constant communication with the Israeli military. I want to see everything possible done to make sure that Palestinian civilians are not being killed. And it is heartbreaking to see what's happening there. And I think many of us recognize the dilemma we have. On the one hand, Israel has a right to defend itself, and it's got to be able to get at those rockets and those tunnel networks. On the other hand, because of the incredibly irresponsible actions on the part of Hamas to oftentimes house these rocket launches right in the middle of civilian neighborhoods, we end up seeing people who had nothing to do with these rockets ending up being hurt. Part of the reason why we've been pushing so hard for a ceasefire is precisely because it's hard to reconcile Israel's legitimate need to defend itself with our concern with those civilians. And if we can pause the fighting, then it's possible that we may be able to arrive at a formula that spares lives and also ensures Israel's security. But it's difficult, and I don't think we should pretend otherwise. Okay? Bill Plant.
Mr. President, like that ceasefire, you've called for diplomatic solutions not only in Israel and Gaza, but also in Ukraine, in Iraq, to very little effect so far.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Hanitka. WQAD will now be returning to our regularly scheduled programming, but you can expect full coverage of the President's remarks when you join us tonight for News 8 at 5. See you then.
Today on Katie.